After years of arguing whether or not it even existed.
Like, imaginary unicorn that you guys think is out there? Yeah, that doesn't exist.
No such thing exists.
I mean, I'm still waiting for the Snyder Cut to be released.
Yeah?
No, I'm kidding. It doesn't exist.
You stupid!
The Snyder Cut released on streaming services, and I can honestly say it was very satisfying and everything I hoped it was. I already expected it to be leagues better than the theatrical version, but after finally watching it, you can see how badly this movie was butchered by Warner Brothers and Whedon. There are already videos out there showcasing the differences between the two versions, so you can check those out if you want to see a bunch of things that were changed. What's really interesting is that while I was watching, I noticed that some of the scenes looked similar, and even the lines of dialogue are the same, but they were either reshot or dubbed over, and I don't know why. Like this.
Kal-El, no! Kal-El, no!
And there were a couple scenes where I thought, why did they reshoot it in the first place? Because the original scene would have worked better than the reshot one. Like this one.
Take that as a yes.
What?
The ring.
Are you okay? You brought us here, but you've hardly spent a minute in the house.
Just got out of a wooden box.
Or when Wonder Woman makes her entrance, they changed the fight choreography for no reason. I guess the goal was to make sure the product came out as shitty as possible, so they changed and reshot scenes that really didn't need to be. It's just an interesting thing I noticed upon rewatching. But the difference is night and day, and yes, even though the gist is the same, which is a big bad villain is coming to destroy Earth, so the heroes band together to stop them and save the world. There are so many things different that it more than justifies the statement that people have been saying that it's a totally different movie. So what I want to do is give my thoughts on it and tell you the things that I liked, and then I'm going to go over how these characters are different in this version versus what we got in 2017. And then at the end, I'll go over the few little things that I don't think worked that well or that I wasn't a fan of. So for starters, the movie is twice as long. The 4-hour runtime works here because it's not only more time to tell the story, keeping it at a nice steady pace, but it also gives each character more screen time, as well as giving events and moments more time to breathe. Things aren't crammed into a short amount of time, fucking up the pacing and flow. Does it need to be 4 hours? No, but I'll go over that later. But this long runtime does give us a better paced story and more developed characters, which was one of the biggest issues with the theatrical cut. Cyborg, The Flash, and Aquaman all felt hollow. But here you spend more time with them, giving them more depth. They feel less two-dimensional. And even the villain Steppenwolf gets more screen time. You see his pursuit for the mother boxes as well as learn more about him. And he actually has a motive this time. And it's not that he misses his mother. Also, there's more action, so that's a plus. Now, despite how long it is, for me personally, most of it flew by. The movie is structured into chapters, with each one focusing on a certain character or events. They range from 30 to 40 minutes long, making them easy to digest. It feels like you're watching episodes in a TV show. This is a great way to do it because this is a big story with a lot of characters and moving parts. Not only do you have Victor, Arthur, and Barry to introduce, but there's still Bruce and Diana trying to form the team, as well as learn about the threat. And there's a whole subplot with Victor's father that not only ties into the main conflict towards the end of the movie, but is also tied directly to Cyborg's character arc. Another plus that helps time go by is that the movie is always engaging. There's always something interesting happening, with very few slow moments, besides the crazy amount of slow-mo shots. Admittedly, the first half is slower than the second, but there's enough there to keep you invested for the first hour, hour and a half, before the team comes together. So the 4-hour length didn't bother me, and most of it flew by. Also, it's great to have a consistent tone this time. It's not as dark and somber as BVS, but it's not as bright and upbeat as an MCU movie. There are jokes sprinkled in throughout, but they're used at more appropriate times, and they land for the most part. And the worst and most forced jokes from the theatrical cut are gone. No brunch, no awkward close-ups, and no jokes that ruin the tension.
Pet Cemetery.
So it is a shift in tone from BVS, but it isn't trying to be a comedy or an MCU ripoff. The score is also great. If there's one thing I can complain about, is the amount of times I hear this one song every time Wonder Woman appears on screen. You know the one. You hear it a couple dozen times in the movie, but besides that, I have no complaints. Also, the music here gives scenes more oomph than before. Like here, Superman dodges the blast from Cyborg and turns towards him. Here's the Whedon version. And here's Snyder's version. Much better. Overall, it's a great score. Junkie XL did a good job. Now I'll go over and talk about each character. Not only do they give him more screen time, which gives them more backstory, but we actually get to see them develop and change throughout the movie, going through actual character arcs. Also, they act differently here than they did in the theatrical cut. Aquaman was kind of a dick before, and aggressive towards the others.
You say a word about this, you'll meet every piranha I know. So you can't find them, or maybe you don't want to.
Man, I'm not doing this on purpose.
Right, because you can't control the machine.
But here, he has a rough exterior, but he isn't heartless, and he's actually sympathetic towards Victor.
We're asking a kid who just lost his father to go up against the most powerful machines in the universe. It's not fair.
I thought you didn't care.
I never said that.
He's a much better and more likable character. The Flash was a one-liner dropping joke machine that just had the worst jokes.
What is brunch?
Here, he still has comedic lines, but most of them actually work and don't feel nearly as awkward. Sure, not everyone will find him funny, but there are less jokes overall from him, and he's much more bearable than before. Batman was a joke in the theatrical version. They fucking ruined him.
Something is definitely bleeding.
Look how they massacred my boy.
But here, he seems like a man desperately seeking to right his wrongs from the previous movie, but he realizes how badly he messed up. Also, his outlook and perspective changes. He's more hopeful and reliant on faith rather than reason. For example, if you look at the 1% chance scene from BVS versus the scene before they go to fight Steppenwolf, you can tell Bruce has changed a lot. He seems more hopeful, he's opening up and letting others in. And people say that he was redeemed at the end of BVS. I never thought that. That was his first step on the road to redemption, and by the end of this movie, he finally goes back to being the hero that he was 20 years prior. So Bruce Wayne, much better here. Diana has also grown, going from shutting out the world and hiding to coming out and helping others. Not only helping Bruce form the team, but she's using her experiences to connect with the others, like Victor, who is someone who has given up on the world.
Fuck the world.
And she's trying to pull him out of that same spot where she was for 100 years. Speaking of which, Cyborg was completely shafted in the theatrical cut. All his scenes were cut. But now he gets a fair amount of time throughout the whole movie. We see not only the accident that caused him to lose his mother and most of his body, but we see how his powers work and how he views the technological world. We see his broken relationship with his dad, unable to forgive him for keeping him alive, as well as being absent for his life growing up. This was something that was hinted at in the theatrical version, but never actually explored. And by the end, he learns to forgive his father, accept himself, and to use his powers to help others. It's a good journey that we get to see throughout the movie. And finally, we got Superman. In Whedon's cut, Superman has a fucked up face, spouts some shitty one-liners.
But I'm also a big fan of justice.
He looks terrible and he's goofy and cheesy. Here, after we see Clark get resurrected, we see him on the farm remembering who he is. And with the second opportunity and guided by the words of his father, he puts on the suit and starts being the hero he is meant to be. His demeanor has changed. He's more confident than he was in Man of Steel and BVS. He's very certain this time about what he needs to do, which makes the beatdown at the end so much more satisfying. Not only because of his growth, but also Steppenwolf is a much better villain this time around, who poses an actual threat to the other members. And having Superman come in the nick of time is so satisfying to see. Now, probably the best part about the League members is that they're all actually useful. Flash isn't saving some random Russian family. Instead, he has to build up speed so he can give Cyborg a jump start so that he can get into the Unity and separate the boxes. But what I love more is the ending of the battle. The League actually loses. The boxes synchronize, Darkseid shows up, and then there's a giant explosion. But Barry runs so fast that he goes back in time and reverses the explosion and gives Cyborg the jump start he needs to pull apart the boxes. It was fucking awesome and I loved it. The entire final battle was just much better. We see them working as a team. Everyone gets their own moments of badassery. It was very entertaining and much better climax. Now that I covered the heroes, I want to talk about the villain. Back in 2017, when I first heard the main antagonist for Justice League was going to be Steppenwolf, I had the same reaction many others did.
Who the fuck is that guy?
A quick Google search and a YouTube video later, I remembered.
Oh, the bitch!
So clearly we all knew that he would be a stepping stone to get to the bigger villain, Darkseid. So even though he was a stepping stone, it doesn't mean they had to make him suck. In Whedon's version, that's exactly what happened. He was boring as hell, had a plain Jane motivation, with a boring ass look. His only defining trait was that he was obsessed with his mother. Now Steppenwolf here not only looks much better, but his fight scenes are much more brutal, so he feels like an actual threat. He's even given a better motivation. He wants to return home to Apokolips, and he pleads that to Desaad, but is denied. And there are even a few lines mentioning a past betrayal from Steppenwolf to take the throne from Darkseid, which failed, so now he's cast out and forced to claim worlds in his name. He just wants to go home. Come on, look at that face. Yeah, it's not the most complex or deep character, but at least this time he actually has some character and actual motivation, and we learn something about him and his relationship with the other new gods. And not only does he have much more screen time here versus the theatrical version, but also the effect on his voice is different, and so are most of his lines. In Whedon's version, he sounded like a tired old man. Here, he actually sounds like an otherworldly being. Even lines that are the same sound much better in Snyder's version.
Noble Queen, why do you fight? Oh, Noble Queen, why do you fight?
A much better performance from the voice actor Kieran Hines. Now as for Darkseid, I can't speak much on him, because he's in the movie for less than 10 minutes, because this movie was going to lead into a future sequel, where he would be the main antagonist. Although I really like throughout the movie, they build him up, first with mentions of his name, then you see a hologram type thing of him, and then you finally see him, and it feels awesome. It would have blown me away in the theaters. And most of the scenes are shown off in the trailers, which is kind of disappointing, but at the same time I understand why they did it. They want to push this movie and show how different it is from the 2017 version, and what better way to do that than by going, hey, DC's biggest villain is in this movie. In 2017, he was only ever mentioned one time.
For Darkseid.
But from the 10 minutes I saw in this movie, I thought he was great. Great voice work from Ray Porter, I love it. And even though he doesn't do much, except for in a vision of the future that Cyborg sees, and in a flashback when he was Uxas, it's still fucking cool to see him. I've been seeing people complain that Darkseid didn't do enough in this movie, and I think it would have been cool to see him more, but he's not the active threat. It's still Steppenwolf, so of course it's going to focus more on him. Also, people are using that for a reason why Thanos is better for some reason, because we didn't see Darkseid do much in this movie. Guys, Thanos sat in a chair for like 5 movies before he did anything, so come on. Now let me touch briefly on the things that I didn't enjoy so much or that could have been better. For starters, and it's the most obvious one, there's some spotty CGI in here. For like 90% of the movie it looks great, but the Martian Manhunter scenes don't look all that polished. And yes, I'm aware this was a part of the additional photography that happened back in October, so these scenes are only a couple months old, and therefore had less time to be worked on. Hopefully they can touch it up some more for a 4K or Blu-ray release, but honestly it really isn't a big deal. If people can praise movies like Black Panther and Infinity War with their few CGI issues, then we can let these few scenes slide. Now this movie is 4 hours long, and like I mentioned earlier, it really doesn't need to be. I mean, I'm happy that it is, because we get as much as we can because we waited so long for this movie, but there are several scenes that go on for a little bit too long that could be trimmed down, or scenes that can be tightened up and they just trim out a few little parts. The first scenes that come to mind is on Themyscira, where the Queen has all these interactions with these other Amazons. They call each other by their names and stuff, and one of them even gets hurt. But these random characters that she's talking to and addressing by name, I have no connection to, so it didn't really need to be included. So there are a handful of scenes that can be trimmed up or shortened. I saw people make the claim that they could take this movie, which is 4 hours, and they could cut it down to 3. I don't think that much needs to be cut. Personally, I was thinking maybe 15 minutes total, and that's really just to tighten up some scenes and cut out little bits that aren't important, and some of the slow-mo parts. And that's weird coming from me, because I've always thought that Zack Snyder used slow-mo really well, either to make the action look really cool, or for important decisions that characters are making. But here, there were quite a few times where I thought that didn't need to be in slow-mo, or they could just remove part of that slow-mo scene entirely. But other than that, I have no complaints. This was a great movie. I really enjoyed it, and I'm working on my 5th rewatch. This was everything I wanted this movie to be. This was the proper continuation of Batman vs Superman. It gave us more time with the characters and their backstories, and proper character arcs. We see Batman make his redemption from BVS, and Superman fully embrace being a hero. And we actually get to learn quite a bit about Cyborg and see his backstory. We get a villain that actually has motivation and is a threat to the League, instead of just a joke. You get much more better looking action, and not to mention a story that feels big and epic. I think that this is one of Zack Snyder's best films, and easy one of the best DC movies. Top 3 in both categories, without a doubt. And for me personally, it's probably in my top 5 favorite comic book movies. And of course, as always, I asked you guys what you thought, and a vast majority of you said it was amazing, over 70%. What I want to know is who are these 3% right here? So yeah, this movie is great, and I really like it. And for anyone who watched the 2017 Justice League and didn't like it, I highly recommend you check this one out. Or maybe you're one of the few people who actually enjoyed the 2017 Justice League, but felt like you wanted to see more, then definitely check it out. Now, a big question is, will the people who never saw the 2017 cut like this movie? I'm very confident in saying yes, they will like it, but probably not as much as those who did see the 2017 monstrosity. But that's just an educated guess, because I think this is a very solid, great movie. And in comparison to Batman vs Superman and Man of Steel, this is more appealing to the masses, and for those who aren't the biggest fan of the genre. So that's gonna do for the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, go and drop a like on it, and leave a comment. Let me know, what did you think of Zack Snyder's Justice League? And tell me, what was your favorite part, scene, or moments? Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Oh yeah, and this scene was awesome.
Make no mistake, I will fucking kill you.
And also, I'm excited to watch the Snyder Cut, because Joss Whedon sucks.
Luigi, it's 4 p.m. Time for your pegging session!
Let's fucking go!